Welcome to the Resilient Surgeon, part of the STS Surgical Hot Topics podcast. Our goal with the Resilient Surgeon series is to inspire our colleagues to be their best selves in and out of the operating room, using scientifically proven tools and recovery strategies of the world's top performers. I'm Dr. Michael Mattis, and in each episode, I will talk to game changers who will share evidence-based practices, real-world strategies, and their own personal stories and experiences to help you build your resilience and to help you be your best self no matter what. Our guest today on the Resilient Surgeon is Dr. Amy Edmondson, Novartis Professor of Leadership and Management at Harvard, and the topic is the science of failing well. Yes, you heard that right, failing well. Because like anything we can do as humans, we can do it well or we can do it poorly. And failing is something that we humans are notoriously bad at. Most of us, especially with our Halstedian cultural legacy lurking in the shadows, continue to look for someone to blame, judge, or criticize for failures. In fact, when asked, what percent of the failures in your organization or family can be considered blameworthy, only 1 to 2% of people answer affirmatively. But when they are asked how many of these failures are treated as blameworthy by those who matter in your organization or life, they answer an astounding 70 to 90% of them are treated as blameworthy. So not only are we blaming and judging when we should not be, but we as individuals do not know how to fail well. Here, Amy sheds enormous light on what is going on under the cognitive hood when we fail, and why we find failure to be so damn aversive. So how do we fail well? Our guest today, Dr. Amy Edmondson, returns for a second time to help us understand and navigate the complex failure landscape so that we can learn, grow, and literally have a more fulfilling and connected life, both at work and at home with our families. She is here to help us learn to be a better, as she calls it, fallible human being, something that we obviously all have in common. Amy is famous for her work on psychological safety, and she has been ranked #1 by the biannual Thinkers 50 in Management Thinkers in 2021 and 2023. In my opinion, her new book, The Right Kind of Wrong, The Science of Failing Well, should be required reading for all physicians and surgeons and residents, as it defines the landscape of failure, the many causes and scenarios in which it occurs, and it also goes deep into our psychological reactions to failure and how to manage them so we can learn and even thrive. And now I bring you Amy Edmondson. Okay. Welcome, Amy, to the Resilient Surgeon. It's great to have you back again.
It's great to be back.
Yeah, and last time we talked about psychological safety, and that's going to, of course, feed into our topic today, which is failing well, all right? And your book, The Right Kind of Wrong, which is, again, like the psychological safety piece, a masterpiece, and I cannot recommend this book highly enough to tear apart, digest, make footnotes, do everything you can to learn everything you can about the incredibly important concepts in this book. And the reason that I wanted to have you on the Resilient Surgeon podcast is because this is really a book about human psychology and resilience, because if we can't deal with failure in a resilient way, it brings us down, pretty substantially.
Absolutely. In fact, if there were one word that, if I had to pick one word that's the most relevant word, it would probably be resilience, because that's what it's all about. And that's what's hard for us. Fallible human beings, right?
It sure is. Yeah. It is hard. And so, after reading your book, and then I said to myself, well, what is failure? And I actually couldn't come up with like a solid, simple definition. So what the hell is failure, and why is failing so damn difficult for all of us, really? It's a huge issue.
Well, you probably won't like my definition because it sounds like an elementary school definition, but
no, that's what I'll like.
Okay, failure is an undesired result.
Good, simple,
and generally, unintended and undesired, but within the realm of possibility. And I think what's important there is it's undesired. I mean, nobody wants failure. Let's be clear. And it's a result. There are mistakes or other things other factors that contribute to that result, but the failure event itself is that result. It's that end. Um, and so I always want to make a distinction, because I think in lay and even in expert language, people use the term failure and mistake interchangeably. And mistake is an unintended deviation from a known practice or process. So the word mistake makes no sense if we don't have prior knowledge.
Right.
About how
I
to
get
get
it. Yes.
what we want.
Yes. Yeah.
So some failures are indeed caused by mistakes, but not all failures, right? Some failures are simply the undesired result of an experiment that didn't work out the way we had hoped.
Right. Right. Well, maybe that's a good segue into the three types of failure and the different contexts. Basic failures, intelligent failures, and complex failures, right?
Yes.
So maybe you
Yes.
can give us a lay of the land of those three options for failing there.
Sure. So basic failures are single cause failures, generally human error. So you text and drive and get into an accident, that's a basic failure. And you don't follow the correct process or dosage or whatever, you get a bad outcome, that's a basic failure. The beauty of basic failures, they're never desired, by the way, but the beauty is when we're at our best, we prevent them. They are preventable. With vigilance, with teamwork, with speaking up, we say in surgery,
with psychological safety. Yeah.
We can prevent, they're the most preventable of the three. Complex failures, and healthcare is full of them, are multi-causal. There's a handful of, say, modest deviations from best that come together Swiss cheese fashion to create an undesired result, where any one of those deviations or factors on its own would not have produced the failure. So that kind of failure is the perfect storm, if you will. They too, when we're at our very best, are preventable. Then the third kind, right kind of wrong, intelligent failure, are the undesired results of thoughtful forays into new territory. So they're truly not preventable. If you want to advance science, your life, accomplishments in the field, you must be willing to tolerate intelligent failures. And I think that's where resilience comes in. Right? You must be willing to do things for which the happy results are not a guarantee.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. And this brings me back to an important point I want to emphasize, and you bring it up in your book on several occasions. This stuff of failing, it's not just in business or in medicine. This is in our families too, and how we raise our children. Because when I'm thinking about intelligent failures, I know one of the plagues of my daughter, who's in college right now, is I got to have this shit figured out by the time I get out of here, right? And the pressure she feels. And, I've tried to encourage her to this is an experimental process. Life is an experimental process. You want to embrace these intelligent failures. And as you said, with your calculus example in the book, you learned a lot about yourself by not doing so well at calculus,
and it was technically, in my defense, I suppose, it wasn't calculus. It was advanced multivariate calculus. So I had done so well in calculus. No, but it's important because I got a little bit cocky, right?
Yeah.
Get an A in calculus and you think, oh, I got this. Well,
right.
Math gets kind of exponentially harder with each. Turns out you really do have to study. And when you don't understand something, you don't understand. Like you have to use that as a signal to get help or study harder or what have you. And that's where I failed. So I call that a basic failure because I really I didn't see it coming, but I hadn't studied enough, and that was clear. If you'd if you asked me real time, are you really on top of this material? I'd have to have admitted not exactly. It's kind of confusing.
Yeah. Well, I think the same pressure is placed on our colleagues in cardiothoracic surgery when they enter their career after training. There's the academic triumvirate of, a patient care, research and education, and they feel like they got to have all those three sorted out. And I encourage them to think about experimenting with these things and dumping the stuff that doesn't resonate with them and doesn't work. These are discoveries of learning. Yeah.
Right. In fact, I mean, I think that's what college and early career, at least for many of us, is all about. Even those going to medical school, you're figuring out which of the various specialty areas and practices you're most compelled by, which are a good fit for you, which things you care most about. So it is a journey of sometimes trial and failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You realize, oh, this isn't for me.
Yeah. But to embrace that. Well, so we all, I think, would agree that failure is hard. Why is it so hard for us as human beings? You talk about confusion, fear, and aversion. Those are the three
Yeah.
big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are the three big ones. One is kind of cognitive. Most people don't have a readily available framework for distinguishing the good and necessary kinds of failures, the intelligent failures, from the other kind. And
Right.
as a result, our brain just says they're all bad, which they're all undesired, but the intelligent failures are really truly good. They're a part of
It's a
progress
good
in
thing. Yes.
in
Yes.
life and in the field. And so that's the sort of the cognitive aspect. So I wrote the book hoping that getting some clarity about the typology would help people fully embrace the necessity of intelligent failures in their lives, in their work.
Well, you gave us a language for it,
It's
and
right,
if you
right.
don't have a language for it, you can't have a conversation about it. Yeah.
That's exactly right. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
without the right and useful and kind of consistent terminology, then it's very hard to communicate effectively with yourself and with each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aversion, I think, is just that spontaneous emotional reaction we have to failure, whether it's because we think, oh, people will reject me because I'm not good enough, or whether it's just even more fundamental and basic than that, right? We want to be successful. We don't want to be failures. And so we overinterpret when we experience a failure. That doesn't make you a failure. It's a failure. And it's okay. And then, I think the fear is, at least the way I describe it, it's a little bit more directly related to what our worries about other people thinking we're not good enough.
Being in the tribe.
Being in a tribe. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a very deep fear that we all have
Huge. Yeah.
of being rejected by, the people who matter most, being kicked out of the tribe. That's there's a deep anxiety about that, because prehistoric times that really would lead to some death by exposure or starvation or both.
The aversion piece of the three, confusion, fear, and aversion. I see aversion as really dealing with your ego most of the time, and we hate to be wrong,
Oh,
right? Oh my God, it's so painful. And my wife will call me out on something, and it's still, I'm thinking, you're right, but God
right.
damn it,
I know. Me too. Even at this, late stage, it's sort of the
And you've written a book, and
line.
it still is there.
I
Yeah.
don't, right. I mean, I don't want to be wrong about even the stupidest things. And
Yeah.
what you have to do is just learn to laugh at that, to sort of
Yes. Yes.
almost enjoy, okay, that's part of the human condition. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm human, and
Yeah.
I'll keep doing my very best to not have that reaction. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I try to practice saying, "Oh, I was wrong." Like I'll say that to my husband, right? "Oh, I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
wrong about that." And it's liberating.
It is liberating. And I use the words, and it was so hard when I started doing this. You're right.
Yeah, I know,
You're
you're
right.
right. And then they almost don't know. There's no comeback to that.
I know there's nothing to
They're all
say.
prepared
Yeah.
to sort of
Yeah.
say again that they were right. Then you realize, oops,
That's the end of it. That
took
ends
away,
it.
you
Yeah.
took away the football,
The
right?
whole damn thing is gone. Yeah. But it's very powerful. And once you get used to that, it doesn't sting as much. You just got to practice it like everything, Yeah. Yeah.
All about practice.
Well, you also, and just to kind of give you the folks a little bit of a taste here, you have specific recommendations to deal with each of those three things, the confusion, the aversion, and the fear, and what helps those three things. And you want to just talk a little bit about
Sure.
those?
I mean, the confusion we already spoke to a little bit,
Yeah,
but
the
that
framework. Yeah.
category, the framework, I think helps us go, okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
could and should work hard to prevent basic failures and anticipate and prevent as many complex failures as humanly possible. And then I must learn to welcome the intelligent failures because they are genuinely steps forward on my path.
Yeah.
The fear is the antidote for that is psychological safety, and you and I have spoken about that in a prior podcast.
Yeah.
That is sort of creating learning environments, creating environments where people really understand that our job is to learn together, and that requires candor, right? That requires admitting when you need help, requires pointing out a mistake of someone else or yourself, and that's not weak, that's strong, right? So it's like build, that's almost a collective project, like that we together will build an environment where candor is welcome, where fallibility is understood to be part of the human
part
condition.
of the deal. Yeah.
And aversion, I think, is about the self-talk and learning to catch yourself, right? Learning to catch yourself. When you make a mistake or you do something wrong or you have a disappointment in new territory, and your initial reaction is, this is awful, or shame, or quickly blaming something else. And just to learn to take a breath and pause and say, okay, what really happened? What's interesting here? And get more cerebral about it to override the negative emotions.
The negative emotions, yeah. You said something, and you said it here, and you also wrote it in the book, and that is under the aversion piece, when we're struggling, and then the ability to ask for help. I certainly was in that state 14, 15 years ago, big time, and ended up in Hazelin and rehab, long story, but, multiple big operations, burnout, all that. And it just was a perfect storm of misery. But yet throughout that time, in terms of the attributions, I kept thinking, I'm just being weak. I'm not rallying up here. I'm not displaying enough discipline. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I was talking to myself about, instead of the ability. I just couldn't ask and say, I really need help here. It was really difficult. Yeah. And that aversion to being weak.
Culture that was sending you unhelpful messages.
Yeah. So it's really so profoundly true. And if you read this and think about the details of your life and the various things going on here, there's just so much wisdom in this book. So, yeah, I know it's really serious. So there we've got the kind of background of the different types of failures, the three root psychological issues that drive us crazy, aversion, confusion, and fear. So how do we go about becoming more resilient to failures? And I want to actually read a little something that I cobbled together this paragraph from many beautiful statements in your book, and I think it represents it well. So you talk about thriving as a fallible human being, and that's the last chapter, right? Which I love it, a fallible human being. And one thing I've noted, and in my coaching of other surgeons now, I have to constantly tell them that we take too many things too seriously, right?
Take yourselves
ourselves, so many things. And of course, it's serious business operating on people, and they're very serious things, but that's discernment. But here you wrote, accepting our fallibility as humans and to have a lighthearted, learning-oriented relationship with failure and live joyfully with it. I mean, this is like, wow, live joyfully with it. Yeah, it gives you freedom from self-protection, and that allows us to play to win and not to play to lose. And play not to lose. Correct. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. But I think is that kind of like, would that be your executive summary of where you want people to go in a way? Or what would you add to that?
That's absolutely right. That would be my executive summary of where I want people as individuals to go.
That's what I mean. Yes.
The book has a lot more richness in terms of organizational strategies, or sort of a lot of recommendations on prevention, as well as recommendations on what does a smart experiment look like, so that you can, when you have the failure, it's an intelligent one. But it does come back to that psychology where, as you started us out, it comes back to each of us as individuals and our ability to, tolerate reality in a way. because
Yeah,
this
no, tolerate, yeah.
the reality of our lives and the reality of our work is that it won't unfold perfectly every time. That's just the reality. And then the question is, how do you want to deal with that? Do you want to deal with it with denial? Do you want to deal with it with sort of projection? It's other people who are making everything go wrong for me, and it's not fair. Or do you want to deal with it as a member of the tribe of fallible beings? Nobody's exempt,
And we're all trying to make this work.
and we're all trying to make it work. And as soon as we make up our minds to really care about making it work and about each other, and recognize our interdependence, recognize our need for each other to make it work, I think that unlocks something.
Yeah, it sure does.
And I think we've gotten sort of collectively, in modern era, social media, who knows what, into a kind of toxic individualism where it's all about me, which is a very lonely and, I think unhappy place to be. But we've been told somehow this is the happy place to be, that you're important and how many likes and clicks and that you have will bring happiness, rather than, no, relationships bring happiness,
That's for sure. That's for
and
sure.
relationships that are authentic bring more happiness. I can really be myself, be be vulnerable, if you will, or say,
Be human.
I'm really scared about this, or
Yeah.
I'm disappointed by that, or what have you. Then we have real relationships, and then we have, I think, more joy.
There's no doubt about all that. And I actually, reflecting after I got out of my Hazelden Treatment Center and all that, thinking a lot about a lot of things, I did come to understand, the American culture here has given me benefits and enormous opportunities beyond comprehension. I mean, staggering levels of things. But it does have embedded in it that individualistic culture, which is, like all things, it's good until it's not, And I think that there's a thread there that's really significant in this culture, and it puts us in a lot of pressure. Yeah.
It's a tension, right? Because of course you have to do your part, right? You must work hard, and it does matter what you achieve and so forth. Like there is, individualism is a strong thread in our culture, as you point out, and it's important, but we are always at risk, I think, especially as Americans, of downplaying the role of others and the community, and when our institutions don't work, we then end up at real risk. So we
Real
do
risk.
our part,
Right.
and in helping our institutions work, which is both, working hard, but also recognizing the incredibly important role of other people. Even
Right,
in an
so
operating room, right? Surgeon could not be more important, and the surgeon can't do it alone.
right. And we're going to come to this incredible experiment that you did. I mean, it is mind-blowing. It's like, I'm going to write an article about that experiment. It is so incredible. Well, we'll come to that in the team business in a few minutes. So, all right. So how do we get to this lighthearted, learning-oriented relationship with failure? What are the key, components that we must practice? Because you state very clearly, this is something that can be learned, and there's no question that it can be, no question.
And I think that's really important, because it's not personality, it's not just some, magic wand where suddenly I have a different relationship with failure. I really believe these are skills. Right? These are cognitive skills, emotional skills. You might say self-management skills, where we can just learn to grapple with our experiences in a more kind of productive way than we spontaneously do. And by lighthearted, I don't mean casual or sloppy. I mean taking some of the terrible weight out of it so that we can be more effective, that we can get in our own way less.
I have a phrase for that I think you'll tell me if you agree. I mean, I think, but it seems to encapsulate this as something I try and teach people, and that is, hold it tight, whatever it is you care about, but hold it light. It's not the end of the damn world,
Yeah.
a lot of these things, so that's kind of, we can take it seriously, be fully engaged and drive forward, but gosh, hold the whole project light here, and there's a message there for living in general too, I think.
I think so too. I
Yeah.
have used the term have strong views, but hold them lightly, which I think is
Same thing.
like
Yeah.
this is not
Yeah.
about being, indifferent. It's about being open-minded
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
genuinely curious. Like I think
Curious.
we can
Yeah.
come from a place of deep passion about what we care about, what we believe to be true, and be genuinely interested in what we're missing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
not just because it's the right thing to do, but because like I really want to know. What am
It
I
is
missing?
so interesting. It
What do you
is.
see that I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
see?
No, that's right. It's
That's how
wonderful.
I
Yeah.
learn. That's how I
Yeah.
get smarter.
Yeah. And it also, the interactions with other people, I mean, it really is a collective wisdom that accrues from all of that. It really is remarkable. Yeah. So curiosity, you meant, well, actually, I'm going to just back up a little bit. And I want to use this as a framework for how to get from A to B. Because
Mm.
you talk about model one thinking and model two thinking, which I love. And model one, you say, implicitly seeks to control a situation, to win, and to appear rational. When we see the world through this frame, we routinely make assumptions about others' motives, many of them unflattering. And I've always said, and this was a phrase that I used to teach residents all the time, assumptions are the mother of all fuck ups. Okay.
That's right.
And it's
Right.
really true. I mean, so I've trained myself to not make assumptions about anyone or anything. And you can do that. But then in model two thinking, you exude curiosity and you are aware that there are gaps in our thinking and you're eager to learn. So one question I had for you in terms of getting from model one to model two, can one use basic failure training as
Hmm.
sort of a jumping point? I mean, like I use acceptance. I train myself to accept things by, if I drop a glass and it breaks, no problem. I'll just clean it up. I don't get, oh
Right.
God, I can't believe I
Right.
did that, that kind of stuff. I think there's a parallel here.
There is, and I first must give credit where credit is due, which is Chris Argyris. That was his, uh,
Yes.
and he was a great mentor of mine, and he that was his sort of profound insight that in sort of analyzing conversations among executives and others, that there were he sort of discerned the basic rules, the unspoken, not even
Yeah.
unaware rules of
Yeah.
conduct, and
Yeah.
realized that
Yeah.
people were largely driven by the need to stay in control, and he realized it was a non-learning
Hmm.
programming,
Hmm.
and it's sort of a part of adulthood, like socialization,
Yeah.
as to become a grown-up, right? You learn how to be sort of in control, safe face, versus that childlike curiosity that we're born with.
Yes. Yes.
And so, what Chris found was that model one was kind of dominant. It's how most people are and how most conversations in companies unfold. And he truly believed that it was possible to make the conversion to model two. And model two involves a kind of healthy mix of inquiry and advocacy, or questions and statements. Now, it's one thing to tell people, look, this is how you're behaving model one. See if you can do model two. Most people can't make that shift
No.
because the leverage lies in cognition. The
Hmm.
leverage, it's very hard to just change your behavior without changing your thinking.
Hmm.
The way you make that shift, which of course is highly related to learning to sort of accept failure in a healthy way, because many times you could say these conversations are experiencing small failures,
Hmm.
talking by each other, we're not making progress, we're ending up
Hmm.
angry at each other, right? You
Hmm.
could call that a failure,
Hmm. Hmm.
maybe an intelligent failure, maybe a complex one. But the way you can make that shift, and it is possible, is by changing your thinking. Now, the thinking that guides model one behavior is that sort of belief that I must stay in control. You are, in a sense, not the enemy, but your other, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yes.
you're privileging yourself over the other.
Yes. Yes.
And the goal is kind of, whether you recognize it or not, the goal is to win. Especially if there's a disagreement, then it's absolutely to win. I'm right, you're not. But most people don't, on the other side, aren't sort of signing up to lose. So you end up at an impasse. So the thinking has to go from you're other, I'm important, I want to win, to I matter, and so do you.
And so do you. Yeah.
You and I together have the potential to make some progress here. So the goal is to learn. It literally is to learn. And that sounds fishy. But if we both learn from this interaction, we will come to a better decision, a better relationship, whatever it is. It's like it's that true. But shifting your thinking, probably the simplest way to put it is, can I shift from wanting to win to wanting to learn? Or, as I would describe it in chapter 5 of the book, can I choose learning over knowing? Because I have this experience, this natural experience of believing I know. I see reality. I don't know what you're seeing, but I'm seeing reality over here. Right?
So you think.
I got to train myself to know that I see reality filtered through my own biases, background, expertise, what have you. And it's okay, but it's almost certainly missing something.
Yeah.
And
as Anais Nin says, we don't see the world as we are. We see the world. We don't see the world as it really is. We see the world as we are.
We are, exactly. And it's just, when you start to develop, a greater awareness, none of us are ever, at least I don't think, certainly I'm not there, but with a slightly greater awareness that I'm not seeing reality, I'm seeing a filtered reality, then selfishly, I'm more willing to choose learning over knowing, because I want to learn. Oh, hey,
you want to figure it out. Yeah.
I want to figure it out.
What am I missing here? Yeah.
If you've got something I'm missing, I sure as heck don't want to leave this encounter without getting some of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly, I think in the culture of cardiothoracic surgery, the hierarchical nature of the departments and divisions and all that still, and the legacy of the era of surgical training that is slowly evolving and changing very slowly. But that still lends itself, I think, dramatically to Model 1 thinking. I mean, it's so embedded. Right? It's so embedded. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Model 1 is, fundamentally staying in control, and staying in control requires us to believe we know and see reality. Yeah. Because if I realize I'm seeing an incomplete reality, then I'm out of control.
You also, some of the other things you talk about in terms of generating our ability to move to Model 2, hobbies, new things, celebrating pivots.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's sort of Model 2, and more broadly, a healthy relationship with failure. Hobbies, right? For instance, I got to, take up pottery, learn to use that wheel. I guarantee you will experience failures, but you probably you'll have a lighthearted relationship. You won't be sort of beating yourself up that you can't do that right the first time. Or pick up my dear high school friend Laura took up ice hockey, if you can imagine, in her 40s, and there was no way to go out on that ice and be really good
and be okay at that. Yeah.
Right. And so she chose that deliberately. I mean, she chose to be not good at something because she thought it looked like fun. And got better at it. Whereas I think that's easier for most of us compared to like our professional life, or even our home life. It's you're not supposed to be good at ice hockey or at pottery, so you're gonna, and then you build some of those failure muscles, right? You begin when I fail, I don't die on the spot, right?
No, I know.
I pick myself back up and I get a little better next time. That's how it's supposed to work.
Oh, it's embarrassing because I've always wanted to learn Italian. I did learn, but I'm this kind of person that's perfectionistic. I admit it. And deep into the grammar, I love to understand the structure, all the crap I really didn't need to do to be able to speak something decently. And I'd feel like a heat of shame when I would screw up the smallest little conjugations. And I mean, it was like so crippling. And then finally I said, this is ridiculous. I've just got to go for it. And all of a sudden it was fun. I was talking. I mean, it was like the shift was so profound, so profound. Yeah. but
What a
I
great
had to
story.
make myself do it. But it was such a like an example of like if you just lighten the load, don't take it so damn seriously, and have fun with it. I mean, embrace it. And it
Have
really
fun
did
with
work. Yeah, yeah.
what I love about that story is you're illustrating something I try to say in my classrooms, which is if you can change your thinking,
Hmm.
the rest will follow. Like it's
It
very hard to
does.
just change your behavior.
Yeah.
But once you realize, okay, I'm just going to have fun with this, boom, everything falls into place.
Yeah. 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 All right, now we're going to go on to a fascinating piece, and this is going to segue into the leadership, cardiothoracic surgeons leading, and teams, and the role of failure on teams. And you did an incredibly interesting study of was it 16, 15 institutions?
16.
Yeah, they were instituting a new minimally invasive cardiac procedure, and you studied the teams and looked at which ones succeeded and did not, correct? And then you
Correct.
learned a lot from that experiment.
Yes, and
Tell
I
us
should
about this.
say, it was an experiment for me because I didn't know a priori whether I'd learn anything or whether there'd be variance, but there was not a formal experiment. I
Right,
did not
I
um,
used the wrong word. Yeah, you
institute a
studied it.
treatment. Right, just
You studied it.
passive
Yeah,
studied it. I didn't institute a treatment and a control or anything like that. But
apologize. Yeah.
fascinatingly, the surgical departments or teams sort of seem to have self sorted into a treatment condition
Hmm.
and a control where those that succeeded, and I should be clear, the outcomes were not worse in either group. I mean, in terms of patient outcomes, those who were not ultimately happy with the procedure just reverted to the traditional procedure.
That's what you mean by success. They
Yeah, so
continued
what I
on
meant
with
by
the
success was sort
procedure.
of mastering the procedure
Right,
and ultimately discerning best which patients this was good for, which it wasn't, but making it part of their repertoire.
right.
So if the department um, mastered the procedure and made it part of their repertoire and believed it to be very good for certain kinds of patients, that was success. And I measured that in various ways. But what was stunning in sort of trying to figure out those who succeeded in learning the new technology versus those who didn't is that it really did boil down to surgeon leadership and
Mhm.
mindset. And the mindset that well, let me say the default mindset, which I think was more than half. It was like slightly over. It was about 8 or 9. I mean,
Mhm.
9 or 10 of the 16 did not succeed, and the others did. And those that didn't, they tended to have the mindset, which will not be unfamiliar to you. Like I'm a capable surgeon. I have learned new things before, and I'll learn this too. And right. Or sometimes it was the hospital across the street is doing this, and if we don't do it, they're going to eat our lunch, right? So it's sort of
Mhm.
top
Mhm.
down. We're gonna do it, no problem. And that didn't really work because everybody else in the operating room just kind of hated it and was scared of it. And anyway, the ones that did work, they were it was quite striking. Their mindsets were learners. They made comments and they weren't younger or older or anything else, more senior, less senior,
All those variables, yes.
all those
Yeah.
variables. They were just more learning oriented. They would literally say things like, um, I'm going to need your help, right? Because you're now going to be my eyes and ears. That required reliance on fluoroscopy in a way, you didn't have the same direct visual access to the surgical cavity, right? So but say it out loud. Like that's a fact, right? It's a
Yeah.
fact
Yeah.
that you don't have
Yeah.
the same visual access, but to say out loud, you're my eyes and ears. I'm going to need you. And I'm going to need you to speak up instantly, if you see something. And,
Mhm.
and it was just being explicit about the novelty, then also being quite explicit about, this is about what a group of people can do when they put their mind.
Yes.
Like they
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
explicit about this being a collaborative learning journey. I don't, they didn't go to school to learn that. They just intuited that this is about us. This is novel. We will succeed if we work together and try new things and we speak up very candidly about what we're seeing, what we're worrying about, and lo and behold, right? They did.
They were the ones. They were the ones
Yeah,
that went on.
they were the ones.
Yeah.
And it all was mindset, much like you
Yeah.
said earlier.
Yeah. So what they did is they created a fault-free, safe learning environment. Is that an accurate
Right.
statement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not
Yeah.
that they were tolerant of failure, right? They
No,
weren't.
they're struggling to avoid it.
Right. That's
Yeah.
exactly. They wanted very much to avoid it. So it was a, not a, it's not a like failure safe environment. It's more a learning safe environment, or
Yes. Yeah.
recognition that stuff happens, and the
Mhm.
sooner we hear about it, the better equipped we are to fix it.
And I can just picture it. I mean, the tension that a surgeon can feel doing a new procedure that's a deviation. You're doing the same thing, but you're trying to learn a new procedure. There's so much tension, and to navigate, like in the procedure that you described, somebody had to hold a balloon in a position, very careful position, so they could do the procedure. And
Right.
they had to be able to say immediately, like, the balloon is a little off or something, it might stop the flow of the operation.
Right.
As a surgeon, I know the
Not
feeling.
easy.
You can, like, God damn it, I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
but to
And
maintain your cool and not, because if you start getting a little anxious, that's emotional contagion. It's terrible. Yeah.
And you're deliberately asking and inviting a nurse to say, the balloon
Look.
shifted, you have to
Yeah.
stop. Like,
Yeah.
since when does a nurse say stop to the cardiac surgeon, right? It's so you have to learn that. You have to sort of, learn new way of thinking, new way of behaving.
And just imagining, I can picture people coming away from the successful ORs, going home and telling their loved ones, God, I had a great day today.
Exactly right.
All right. Now, isn't that worth a lot? That's
so much.
So much.
Right.
I had a great day today. I loved working with them. We did this new thing. It was so cool. We feel like we're doing something meaningful, all the goodies from that.
I literally interviewed 2 cardiac surgery nurses, experts. Both of them had 20 years in their role. 2 different academic medical centers, 1,000 miles apart. These 2 were indistinguishable in a way, because their careers were so similar and the contexts were so similar. And I asked in the first one, I said, so, what do you think of this new procedure? And she says, oh, when I see one of these on the list for tomorrow, it's like, oh, just get me a fresh blade.
Get me, yes.
Right now. And I'm like, oh, I guess you don't like it, right?
Yeah.
That was clear as a
Yeah.
bell. You don't like it very much.
Yeah.
So then I'm, the next hospital, I'm asking someone who could be her twin, and I'm expecting kind of the same answer. I said, what do you think of this new procedure? It's sort of the ease-in question. And she says, oh, when I see one of these on the list for tomorrow, I'm so excited. I feel like I've been enlightened.
Wow.
Like, say what? Right?
Yeah.
Same technology, same, everything seems
Same everything.
Yeah. The attitude.
The attitude. Yeah. And what a great feeling as a human being to feel like you're part of something like that.
Yeah. It's
just so massive.
Making a difference.
Yeah.
In patients' lives, they can get out of it quicker, whatever. But it was that, as you just said, that's what reminded me of it, because I really did get that sense of, here was someone who went home at the end of the day and said, I made a difference today.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. I could keep going on for hours. I just realized we're already 15 minutes over what I presumed was the allotted time. Yeah. Thank you for what you do. You've brought so much to our worlds in medicine in particular, and you seem to have this strong relationship with us as cardiothoracic surgeons. If you read Amy's books, I mean, there are so many things in there, from the beginnings of cardiac surgery all the way through to these studies. Yeah. Clarence Dennis and Lilla Highs and everything. So really remarkable
being
work.
Brave in new territory.
That's for sure. That was really being brave. And, I had the privilege of working with John Najarian, who did many of the same things with transplantation and pancreas transplants here. Yeah. So it was a real honor to be a part of that era, in a sense. Yeah. But Amy, thank you for taking the time to be with us, and for all of your incredible work. Really love it.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Hope to see you soon.
This has been The Resilient Surgeon, a podcast brought to you by the Society of Thoracic Surgeons. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, please rate it 5 stars and let your friends, trainees, and colleagues know about it. On social media, you can use the hashtag #BeYourBestSelf. More information about the Society of Thoracic Surgeons is available online at sts.org.